Back in February of 1959, deep in the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, something truly awful happened. 9 incredibly experienced hikers died in one of the most bizarre and terrifying ways imaginable. Their story? Well, it's become one of history's most chilling and deeply unsettled unsolved cases. We're talking about the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Just think about that for a second. That's from Yuri Yudin. He was supposed to be the 10th hiker, but he had to turn back early because he got sick. Can you imagine? He was the sole survivor, and for his entire life, he was just haunted by that one single question. A question that, for over 60 years, investigators, scientists, and even conspiracy theorists have been desperately trying to answer. And that really is the heart of it, isn't it? What on earth could make 9 seasoned professional hikers, we're not talking about amateurs here, what could scare them so badly that they'd slice their way out of their own tent from the inside and run out into a frozen wasteland? I mean, some of them didn't even have shoes on, and the temperature, it was minus 30 degrees Celsius. Just unthinkable. Okay, so let's set the scene. February 26th, 1959, the Ural Mountains. The mystery really kicks off when the hikers just don't come back. So a search gets launched. A team is flying over the slopes of this mountain, which, by the way, has a super ominous name, Kholat Syachel. In the local language, that means dead mountain. Yeah. And what they're about to find, it's literally the beginning of a nightmare. So from the air, they spot it, the group's tent. It's partially collapsed, half buried in snow, but it's completely silent, There's no sign of life at all. No smoke, no movement, nothing. Just this really eerie quiet in this huge empty wilderness. You can just imagine the rescue team as they land, that feeling of dread just growing with every single step they take towards that tent. And when they get there, the scene just makes no sense. It's a total mess of contradictions. First off, the tent was sliced open, but not from the outside, like an animal attack. No, it was cut from the inside. And get this, all their stuff was still there. Boots, heavy coats, all the winter gear they would need to survive. It was all left behind. They found footprints leading away from the camp, and some were from people who were barefoot. But the tracks showed they were walking, not running in a panic. Why? Why would you walk calmly, barefoot, into that kind of cold? And then, the weirdest part. After about 500 meters, the tracks just end. Gone. No signs of a struggle, no other people around. It's like they literally vanished into thin air. Now, to really wrap your head around just how impossible this whole situation is, you absolutely have to understand who these 9 people were. See, this wasn't just some random group of friends on a weekend trip. They were, honestly, at the absolute peak of their physical and mental game. Yeah, this was no casual camping trip, not by a long shot. The leader, Igor Dyatlov, was only 23, but he was a brilliant engineering student and a total expert when it came to the outdoors. And his team, just as capable. They were all certified, experienced hikers. And the trip they were on, it was a grade 3 expedition. That was the highest, most difficult rating you could get back then. I mean, this was reserved for the best of the best. The point is, they knew the risks, they were totally prepared, and they were not the type of people to just panic. And we know a lot about their journey because their cameras and journals were all recovered from the tent. When you look at the photos, you see this happy, confident group of people just having a great time. Their last journal entry described setting up camp on the evening of February 1st. They were on the slope of that same mountain, Kholat Syachel, because the weather was getting worse. And that's it. That's the last we hear from them. Sometime that night, something went terribly, terribly wrong.
So the empty tent, that was disturbing enough, but it was only the beginning. As the search party tried to follow those tracks that just seemed to disappear, they started to find the bodies. And the condition the bodies were in, well, that's what took this from a tragic accident and turned it into a truly terrifying, completely unexplainable mystery.
Okay, so the first 5 bodies they found were scattered out between the campsite and a big cedar tree about a kilometer away. They were only partially dressed, and the cause of death was pretty clear: hypothermia, freezing to death. Tragic, but it makes some sense. But then, months later, when the snow finally started to melt, they found the last 4. They were down in a ravine, and they told a totally different, much more violent story. The injuries they had were, well, they were nothing short of catastrophic. And this is where things get really, really strange. It's the central paradox of the whole case. One of the victims had his chest completely crushed. Another had a fractured skull. The medical examiner said the force needed to do that was immense, like being hit by a car at high speed. But, and this is the impossible part, there were no external signs of injury at all. No bruises, no cuts, no damage to the soft tissue. It was almost as if they'd been crushed by some kind of incredible pressure from the inside.
You know, one of the really bizarre details, the fact that some of them were partially undressed, actually has a scientific explanation. It's a known phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. Basically, when someone is in the final stages of severe hypothermia, their brain gets confused and sends these signals that they're overheating. They feel this sudden, intense flash of heat and they start tearing off their clothes. So, okay, that explains one piece of this crazy puzzle. But honestly, it just makes all the other evidence that much weirder and harder to figure out. And believe me, the strangeness just keeps escalating from there. One of the women, Lyudmila Dubinina, she was found missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her jaw. Then, there's the fact that several of the bodies had this weird orange-tinted skin, and their hair had turned gray, like they'd aged decades overnight. And then to top it all off, forensic tests came back showing that some of their clothes had traces of radioactive contamination on them. I mean, where in the world did that come from?
So, let's just take a step back. You've got these massive internal injuries with no external signs. You've got radiation, you've got a missing tongue. It's all just this heap of conflicting, terrifying evidence. So, what did the official Soviet investigation say happened? Get ready for this. This was their official finding. The cause of death was an unknown, compelling natural force which the hikers were unable to overcome. I'm not kidding. That's the actual quote. Not an avalanche, not an animal attack, not an accident, but a compelling natural force. It has to be one of the most mysterious and just vague conclusions in the history of investigations. It explains absolutely nothing. In fact, it kind of implies something extraordinary and completely unknown was responsible.
And then, boom, just like that, it was over. The Soviet government abruptly closed the case. They sealed all the files, classified them as top secret, and made the entire area off limits for years. Now, of course, that kind of secrecy just poured gasoline on the fire of speculation. It made everyone think the authorities knew a whole lot more than they were telling.
So with the official story being so unsatisfying, a total vacuum of information was created. And into that vacuum, all sorts of theories started to swirl. We're talking everything from the highly scientific to the deeply, deeply paranormal. For decades now, pretty much everyone has had a crack at trying to solve this thing. Fast forward to 2019, the Russian government actually reopens the case. Their new official conclusion? A slab avalanche. So the theory goes that a delayed slab of heavy snow fell on the tent, which caused those initial injuries and sent everyone into a panic. Okay, but it just doesn't fit all the facts, does it? Why would these super experienced hikers cut their way out of the tent instead of just digging their way out, which would have been way easier? Why do their footprints show them walking calmly, not scrambling for their lives? And let's be real, a slab of snow absolutely cannot explain the radiation, the missing tongue, or those crazy internal injuries with zero external marks. It just doesn't add up. So if it wasn't an avalanche, what else could it be? Well, the other theories get even more dramatic. Some people are convinced it was a secret military weapons test that went horribly wrong. That would explain the radiation and the government cover-up, right? Others point to something called infrasound, this really low-frequency noise created by wind patterns that can supposedly induce intense, irrational panic. And then, of course, you get into the more out-there ideas. An attack by a cryptid, like a Siberian Yeti, or even an encounter with a UFO, something not of this world. And just to make things even weirder, remember the lead investigator from 1959, Lev Ianov? Years later, he actually admitted that on the night of the incident, he and other people in the area saw strange, bright orange spheres flying in the sky. So, what were they? Military flares, a secret rocket launch, or something else entirely? To this day, we still have no idea. So here we are. More than 60 years have gone by. Some of those top secret files have been declassified. New investigations have been launched with all our modern technology. And yet, the core of this mystery, the central question of what happened, remains completely, stubbornly intact. I think this quote just perfectly captures how maddening this whole case is. It really is a puzzle with all the wrong pieces. Every single clue you look at, every theory you try to apply, it just leads you to more questions and more contradictions. It's a true-life horror story where the facts just refuse to line up and tell you what happened. So after all these decades of investigations, all the declassified files, and countless theories, why does the truth feel like it's further away than ever? It's a case that has almost too many clues, but not a single clear answer. What kind of compelling natural force could possibly account for all of it? It seems the more we learn about Dyatlov Pass, the less we actually know. And maybe that's the ultimate terror of this story, the chilling idea that some questions just don't have answers.